It's one of those immutable laws of the internet. Keep a conversation about societal collapse going long enough, eventually someone will mention the mouse utopia experiments. No, you haven't clicked on the wrong video. It's just that, unlike how being equated with Hitler is known to be problematic, or how everything on the internet is destined to turn into porn, comparatively few people are familiar with what the mouse utopia experiment even is, let alone its significance as a social commentary. So, to understand how I got from talking about mice to society to humanity's existential quest, I first need to get you acquainted with a term called behavioral sink. And just to make this easier on myself, I'm going to directly quote this from the Wikipedia article on the same. To quote, "Behavioral sink is a term invented by ethologist John B. Calhoun to describe a collapse in behavior that can result from overpopulation. The term and concept derive from a series of overpopulation experiments Calhoun conducted on Norway rats between 1958 and 1962, in which he created a series of rat utopias, enclosed spaces where rats were given unlimited access to food and water, enabling unfettered population growth. In the 1962 study, Calhoun described the behavior as follows. Many females were unable to carry the pregnancy to full term or to survive delivery of their litters if they did. An even greater number, after successfully giving birth, fell short in their maternal functions. Among the males, the behavioral disturbances ranged from sexual deviation to cannibalism, and from frenetic overactivity to a pathological withdrawal from which individuals would emerge to eat, drink, and move about only when other members of the community were asleep. The social organization of the animals showed equal disruption. The common source of these disturbances became most dramatically apparent in the populations of our first series of 3 experiments, in which we observed the development of what we called a behavioral sink. The animals would crowd together in greatest number in one of the 4 interconnecting pens in which the colony was maintained. As many as 60 of the 80 rats in each experimental population would assemble in one pen during periods of feeding. Individual rats would rarely eat except in the company of other rats. As a result, extreme population densities developed in the pen adopted for eating, leaving the others with sparse populations. In the experiments in which the behavioral sink developed, infant mortality ran as high as 96% among the most disoriented groups in the population. Other researchers argued that Calhoun's work was not simply about density in a physical sense, as number of individuals per square unit area, but was about degrees of social interaction. Social density appears to be key. End quote. Now, what does any of that have to do with the search for meaning? Well, consider how human beings typically go about searching for meaning. What do we find meaningful? In another video titled A Wolf's Account of Arcane Philosophy, I defined meaning as that which embodies and engenders a definable change. Things which create change, either constructive or destructive, are meaningful. Things which only preserve the status quo are meaningless. A utopia, by definition, is a perfect or ideal state of affairs for everybody involved. The impossibility of such a state notwithstanding, any alterations made would be ideally moot, or else would entail worsening the status quo, and would therefore be evil by definition. Like all animals, humans find meaning through status. Or rather, we earn status by doing things that others, specifically the opposite sex, perceive as being positively meaningful to our society and species. Through their strength and cunning, the males accrue resources, while the females birth and suckle the next generation. You can probably already see where I'm going with this. However, what the article did not mention, but which I will now, is that male rats will compete, and in a sense derive meaning from life, just as male humans do. When both come of age, they will search out abundant territory in which to nest before amassing, or at least attempting to amass, a female harem. And if there is too much competition in a given area, i.e., there's too many other males around, the youngest of them will venture out to try their luck in the great unknown. In the human world, this sort of young male exodus has most famously been called a choreos, or war band. This is what the Vikings, Golden Age pirates, Renaissance mercenaries, and even many detachments of medieval knights also were. Gangs of armed men with little to no reproductive prospects in their homeland, looking abroad instead to build their legacies, or die in the process. At its core, this is what every single colonial expansion, military conquest, and expedition in human history has ever been, a grand-scale version of what our ancestors have done since they first learned to throw rocks at mammoths. But what if they're unable to do this? What if they're enclosed, trapped, or if there simply is no great unknown left to explore or expand into? Then they have to build upwards, to reach for the sky, to plant their flags as near to the top of the societal mountain as they can reach. But what if they can't do this either? Well then, the whole natural operating system breaks down into a cacophony of fatal errors. What's left is a hollow, vapid world, where the only meaningful enterprise left for the young is to tear into the old establishment like a pack of starving dogs, to open up for themselves by force that which they perceive as having been socially and legally barred off. Their road to the utopian dream they were promised from birth. That dream which was never about material comfort, as much as the commercial glutton's marketing pushes to the contrary, but about contentment, which can never be had from running on some corporate treadmill. No one possessed of anything even vaguely reminiscent of a soul can ever be contented by merely maintaining what they had not originally built, by sacrificing for the legacy of a race of technocratic nobles that see them as nothing but a ball of fuel to be consumed and then discarded at their leisure. In short, to simply label this a problem of overpopulation, as Calhoun did, and leave it at that, I think is to do both it and ourselves a gross and dangerous disservice. For I believe this issue runs far deeper than a mere shortage of physical space. It is a lack of a real substantive vector, particularly on the part of males, a lack of reproductively viable target at which to aim their efforts that results from a fossilized system that exists and maintains for the sole benefits of the existing frontrunners, where anything even vaguely deviant of the status quo is deemed harmful or problematic by the existing powers for obvious reasons. But though I like to think mine are at least somewhat educated opinions, I am still what's known in the YouTube sphere as a professional idiot. So, as always, leave your own thoughts below, and until next time, stay safe, stay sane, and don't forget, some fresh air a day keeps the brain rot away. Peace.